Week 2, Chapters 3 and 4, Project Management Overview. In this week's module, Module 2, you have 2 learning objectives. First, you need to be able to describe the different phases of a project and their significance. And second, you need to explain how project management has evolved. So let's begin by talking about the project life cycle and its various phases. The first phase, the initiation phase, it identifies a need for a business. So it would look at a business problem or an opportunity. Typically, a business case is written to recommend a few options for a solution. Next, a feasibility study is conducted to determine whether each option addresses the project objective well and whether the business can obtain all the required resources for the initiative. A final recommendation is written, which includes the feasibility of the project, which means can we do the project, and the justification, should we do the project. The next phase is the planning phase. This is where the project solution is further developed. It will be extremely detailed. Every aspect of the project is examined and broken down. Every step is planned to as great a detail as humanly possible. All project tasks and resource requirements are identified and planned into the activities. Will include activities like a list of tasks and dependencies and time frames. The scope for the project is defined and must then be managed as the design of the project continues. 3 deliverables that should be available when the planning is completed are the project task list, the project schedule, and the estimated cost of the project. Anything that might be a threat to the project is also identified. Therefore, you will include a risk management process in this phase as well. The last of the planning will require a quality management plan, which controls measures and a list of criteria to gain customer acceptance, which is called the acceptance plan. Once everything is planned out in detail, you are then ready for the next phase of the project. You should realize that the planning phase is the most likely phase that will take the most amount of time. After all, a poor plan will end with a poor project. The next phase is the execution phase or implementation phase. This is where things start to happen. The plans you made in the previous phase are now going to actually start moving forward. As the project begins to take off, you'll move into a new phase. The monitor and control phase. This is where you begin to create reports and monitor all the elements of the planned project. You will compare the actual progress of the project to the planned progress of the project and let all your stakeholders know how things are progressing. You will also address any issues that could impact the success of the project. Communication will be the key activity during this phase. And then the last phase is the closing phase. There's more to this phase than you might think. All final deliverables must be released to the customer, such as the project documentation. A customer sign-off is typically required. Remember the list of project requirements that the customer agreed to in the planning phase? Well, this is the sign-off on all those identified elements. All the resources must be released from the project, including the human ones. Last, a lessons learned study is done to determine how the next project can be completed better with less complications or issues, and lessons learned documents are then stored for future reference. So here is an example of how these different phases relate to each other. You start with the initiation, then you plan the project. Then you begin to execute the project and you find more things that are complicated or things that might impact the project. So during your monitoring and controlling, you say, hey, we've got this issue. So you go back to planning and designing to address that issue. Then you execute your plan again, and then you monitor and control the project as it goes along, and you move in that iteration around and around until you finally meet all the needs of the project and you move into closing. There are 2 major worldwide organizations whose mission is to impact the project management profession: the Project Management Institute and the International Project Management Association. I am a member of PMI and a Project Management Professional, or PMP, certification. So while the world headquarters is in the United States, there are many individuals who have the PMP, like I do, worldwide. The other organization, IPMA, has its headquarters in Switzerland. The material you will be learning, however, leans more toward the PMI approach. 5 volunteers founded the Project Management Institute, or PMI, in 1969. Today, it's a non-profit project management association. The certifications that PMI offers is the most widely recognized for the field. The Project Management Professional, or PMP, was first offered in 1984 and continues to this day. According to the PMI Fact File Stats blog, today's number of active PMP holders is 1,265,538. This includes members from 217 countries or territories. The first version of the PMBOK, or the Project Management Body of Knowledge, was introduced in 1987. The IEEE, which is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and the ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, has accredited PMI and the International Organization for Standardization recognize its certification program. Project management has evolved into a very large body of knowledge, and PMI is responsible for developing and promoting the PMBOK. There are several organizations who offer certifications in project management. You can conduct an online search if any of these interest you and you want to find more information out about them. As you have learned earlier, project management is about managing projects, and under the umbrella of a project, you will find several areas that will need managing as a project moves forward. This list is the PMBOK's 10 knowledge areas. Notice they all include the word managing. This means to be an effective project manager, you must be able to manage every one of these areas very well. So let's take a look at the first one, managing integration. Integration is all the parts and pieces that are working at the same time to get the project done. So you might have a couple of server guys, you might have a network guy, you might have a team of database people, and they're all working to accomplish the project at the same time, but they're doing their parts and pieces. Project manager is the one who makes sure that all that integration works well together. The next one, managing scope. Scope is what we identified needs to happen. What do we want to have at the end of the project? It makes sure that you don't build or add to the scope, which can cost time and money, and that you don't miss any parts of the scope. Third, managing time or the schedule. Naturally, that is easy to comprehend. You don't want your project to be late on completion. So that's what this area is about. Trying to make sure everything is completed as expected. Next is managing cost. You don't want cost overruns. Naturally, you'll have an upset manager and boss and customer. So you want to try to make sure your costs stay within the boundaries of what was identified originally. Next is quality. If you finish the project but it's a poorly done project, it's not going to have very good consequences between you and your customer or your stakeholders. So you want to make sure the project meets all the standards required for that project. Next is managing human resources. All the people involved in the project, you have to manage them, just like a regular business manager. You have to manage the relationships, the communication, and so on. Number 7, managing the communication, right? You have to, who needs to know what, when, and how often? So you have to set up some kind of plan on who's going to be communicated with, how they're going to receive the communication, what will it look like, and so on. Number 8, managing risk. You have to watch out for things that could get in the way of the completion of the project. Any kind of risk. Running out of funds. You can't obtain a certain part. You name it. If it can impact the project, it's a risk that you need to take a look at and figure out how to handle it. Number 9, managing procurement. How are we going to buy all the things that we need, and will we get them in time? And number 10, managing the stakeholders. And that's the people involved in the project. You've got to manage the people who care, who have a vested interest in that project. This is a summary of the project management framework and methodology. Notice at the very top is the PMI framework and methodology, and then underneath that you have your process groups, which is the phases of project management: the initiation, planning, execution, controlling and monitoring, and closing. Then the middle box is the knowledge areas, and we just discussed those. And then the last box, methodology, those are the things that are used as these two things are happening. So knowledge areas happens within those process groups. And the methodology is the different ways that we use to manage all that. So we have forms, we have templates, we have guidelines, we have flowcharts, all kinds of documents that we can use to help us stay on top of everything that's happening. Scrum is a formal project management methodology and part of the Agile project management. The term came from the game rugby, and it means a way of restarting a game. So when used with project management, it's like restarting the project every so many weeks. The idea is that you will discover more about the project needs as you implement the project. It uses a sequence of sprints for development. A sprint is just a small project phase. You take one day to plan for what can be done during that sprint now, and then develop what was planned in that one day, and then you come back together and share what was accomplished during your sprint, which it might be a month or 2 months. And then you'll discuss what was accomplished and then what round 2 is going to look like. PMO stands for Project Management Office. Many large organizations who develop and implement a significant number of projects on a regular basis will create a separate PMO. This office is designed to help ensure that projects are aligned with the organizational objectives, provide templates and procedures so the project managers all use the same templates and procedures. It standardizes everything so that everyone is doing the same thing. It provides training and mentorship for the project managers. It'll provide facilitation and help if they run into issues. It helps the project managers stay abreast of new trends and new learnings about project management. And it also serves as a repository for project reports and lessons learned. All right, so this is the end of Week 2's introduction. Be sure to study the textbook. There are more details there. And I will see you in your discussions.